for the town of Winchester for Tuesday, March 18th to order with a roll call vote. Diab? I can't hear. Diab Jarius.
Hello.
Hey,
You can hear me. Yay.
for a grand finale, Diab Jarius.
Well, it's a good day to have audio problems. Oh,
Okay, roll call vote. Are you with us? I think we can see you're present. Nick Rosettos,
Present.
John Cortezas,
Present.
Brian Vernalia.
Present.
And I'm Carrie Layton. I am present as well. Thank you, Cheryl Dennis, for joining us as recording secretary. Thank you, WinCam, for having us live and recorded. Do we have any updates?
I have two updates, quick,
Okay, great.
really quick. The first is that after our last meeting and we voted on proposed changes, potential proposed changes for the Committee on Government Regulations Decennial Review regarding the Planning Board appointment to the Capital Planning Committee. I went to that meeting and represented how we had voted and the reasons we voted that were stated in the meeting. They listened to me carefully. Then I waited till the meeting got to the point where they voted, and they actually weren't considering any of those changes actually in what they were doing anyway. They had basically decided to reject all those changes before we even got there. So we spent a lot of time doing nothing, but those changes aren't happening.
Okay.
That's update number one. Update number two is I've been working with Fugger Consulting about doing the economic feasibility analysis. It's underway. If things go well, we should have planning results mid-April. But as we discussed last meeting, we are not putting anything forward for Springtown meeting. So we have time to get those results back, to mull them over, to get everything done the way we want, to run them by council and have everything ready for the fall. So those are the two updates I have.
Both great updates. Thanks for sticking it out at that meeting and for shepherding the EFA along.
You're welcome.
Who else has updates? I have a couple, but John, you were at the WCCP meeting, right?
Yes.
What do you-
I mean, kind of, started making plans to get going. I know that David Miller is kind of the temporary chair. And he has, we need some rules and handbook, and he has gotten a hold of what Belmont's been using, and we're kind of start there.
Great.
And it looks like a reasonable place to start.
Great. And as a reminder to everyone, John stepped in for Nick. Nick was the Community Preservation Act, the group that's putting together the rules that the funds for the Community Preservation Act will follow. And Nick is not able to maintain the meeting scheduled. We had elected John as the alternate liaison. And he was able to step in kind of last minute and fill that spot so he can keep us updated. We can keep continuity as that committee gets up and going. Lots of sort of front loading in terms of figuring out who's going to need funding, what they might be asking for. So it's really important that we keep tabs on that. We will, at our first meeting post-election, be reviewing all the liaison positions. So in terms of sort of thinking ahead to what people are willing to do, we will do chair elections at that first meeting, and we will re-examine our list of liaison obligations. I will not be accepting any nominations for chair, vice chair, or clerk. So those are all available. Please think over whether you're willing to fill those positions, and then also think about the liaison positions. There are a few that are active and kind of time consuming. There are a few that conflict with each other. We can't have people on multiple funding committees that are in conflict with each other. So if there's something that you feel you're undertending or really doing a great job with, definitely be ready to represent that. And we'll need to sort of think about particularly the CCP position and how it interacts with the housing authority. So that will not be sort of my task, but it will come together right as I hand over the reins. So I hope we come to that April 1st meeting ready to sort of reorganize very effectively.
I have a conflict for tomorrow's WCCP meeting. I've actually got a dinner from 6:15 to 7:30. So I won't be able to attend that meeting. And if John is available to step in, that would be helpful. I mean, otherwise we won't have anyone.
Yeah, I actually, I'm not sure I'll be quite back by 6 o'clock. That's an early one, I think.
Okay, I
Um,
also
I
said there's
was,
a full committee meeting April 2nd, Monday 10 a.m. meeting. So they're meeting 3 times in the next 2 weeks. Is that right?
All
yeah,
I saw was something going on tomorrow night from
Yeah.
6 to 7.
yes, yeah, that we did decide that. There's a lot to figure out what the application process is going to be.
Right,
There's certainly, there's really nothing there.
right,
So
right.
there's a lot to be sorted out.
Are you able to make that meeting tomorrow, John?
I don't think I can. I'm going to be in Hingham. I don't know how late I'm going to be there, but getting back to Winchester by 6 is it's
Okay.
I think it's remote, but
no, well,
but yeah. Anyway,
Let
I'm going to
me,
be in my car all day. So
yeah.
okay, we'll sort that out offline. David also offered any curious members who might want to see what it looks like. I don't think the meetings are open to the public yet, particularly not the working group. But if there are, if anyone is interested in, from the planning board is interested in sitting in to observe the meeting so that they can get a sense of the workload and so we can keep continuity in these critical early stages, he is allowing that. So I'll reach out to David and figure out the best way to get all of these meetings covered until we've got everything sorted out after the elections. Okay, anyone else have updates? Nothing from our littlest assistant to the town planner.
Not right now, no.
Okay, anything from the new dad? Any exciting updates on? Just trying to give a positive spin here.
No, I don't have
he's
anything
just been up
significant.
all night every night, and
Yeah, he's delirious, barely hanging. Unfortunately, that's looking to soften the blow that the proposal, Taylor mentioned this in an email, but to make sure that we say it publicly, the proposal to continue the pandemic accommodation for remote meetings has been sort of brought to the Mass legislature, but it hasn't been, I don't think, maybe this is minute to minute, voted on yet. So far, we are required to go back to all in-person meetings starting on April 1st. April 1st meeting was supposed to be in person anyway, but please anticipate planning board meetings being in person until we get permission or don't to go back to a hybrid or to a remote meeting format.
The Senate and the House have agreed to having remote meetings until June of 27, and they're trying to get it to a vote before the end of this month.
Okay.
But-
So
oh wow,
Hot off the press, someone emailed me this today.
You're on
Great.
top of that.
I
Yeah.
have, I've got a Commonwealth Beacon reports that they have 2 procedural votes planned on Thursday. The aim of getting the bill to the governor's desk by Friday.
Okay, great, good. So hopefully we don't have to worry. Yay. Brief update about the ledges. So we will be required to hold a public hearing about the ledges article. So if you remember, the ledges was an article that was brought to rezone a parcel of the ledges residential development. They want to rezone one of the parcels that's part of the ledges and make it single family zoning so that they can sell that parcel. The article at fall town meeting was withdrawn before town meeting opened, and so there was some discussion about what that meant for the article. Ultimately, we are waiting for a memo from town council on exactly what which rules govern in a situation like that. But I want to quickly update you that the planning board's role in it will be to have a hearing on the ledges article. It is back on the spring town warrant because they had the signatures to get it back on the warrant. it will move forward to town meeting debate if we vote favorable action on that. So we will add that to the public hearing when we are also reviewing the article that we are bringing, which is for the FEMA flood maps. And we will add the ledges to that public hearing. And there's probably more discussion around that, but I'm just letting you know about that, that quick update, and we'll discuss it more in the future. I think the only other update that I need to give is that we need a date from Diab for when we can do a little send off for him. Oh, Diab, you have a question? Go for it.
I just wanted to state that, regardless of whether the planning board votes to endorse the petition, it will move forward. It's just that,
Right, two steps. Right.
yeah,
We need to,
it will always go before the town meeting. But if it's get voted down by town meeting and the planning board votes for it, then it is eligible to come up again at the next, without without a 2-year delay. Did I
yeah,
get that right? Yeah,
the hearing that we have is going to have to decide if we vote not to bring it to the floor of town meeting, it will come back in the fall if it's petitioned to come back in the fall.
I think the citizens can bring it to town meeting without the planning board's approval.
Because there was negative action. This is what we're going to wait for the memo from Jay.
Okay, okay, then I withdraw
And-
all my comments.
Much confusion. You are right. You're exactly on one of the many possible tracks.
Okay,
But
sorry about that. Sorry about the
No,
noise.
no, you're bringing important points to the light. But the hearing will have to decide if, two things, our position on the article, if we move the article forward. But we are waiting for the memo to have great clarity on how we got here and how we go forward. Just know that the ledges is back.
It's back, baby.
And don't call it a comeback. Okay, so we need a date from Diab on when we can have a send-off after, I believe, 9 years on the planning board.
Well, I appreciate that. I would say that April 1st would be a really illustrious date, but I think you have a lot of things on that day. So why don't you,
Is a weekend or a weekday easier for you?
I am, these days, evenings and weekends are possible.
Okay,
Weekdays are work.
we
So-
don't, so a few folks have asked, so, do we want, we don't, any thoughts from the, I'll let everyone pull up.
Probably on weekdays, I don't know, it might be more, the weekends just tend to be nuts, or it can be, but,
Do we
maybe
want
a
to,
Monday.
if the Tuesday when we don't have a meeting, so next Tuesday?
Oh, yeah, maybe, yeah, that might be.
Review, we're
Okay,
letting
yeah.
go of our quality of life Tuesdays anyway. This one would be a bright spot.
And I do appreciate this. I am typically not a real public person, so I will come in and be very embarrassed, but I appreciate
You have
everyone.
been an incredibly valuable member of the town. Your service has left a long legacy. You are a relentless advocate for housing in Winchester. It would have been very easy and understandable, and maybe it was baffling that you did not drop the efforts to get 3A done early, to get North Main moving forward when we didn't have a town planner, when you had essentially no help. I mean, you took time off from work. You always keep the most marginalized citizens in mind as you move your agenda forward, and you are woven into the bylaws in a really immortalized way. And it's always been a pleasure to work with you. I've learned tons from you. And I will say that for someone who constantly calls out the fact that you have hearing problems, you are one of the most careful and thoughtful listeners I have had the pleasure of working with in town. And I'm grateful for the time that I've gotten to know you, and the town is grateful for your service. So we're taking you out.
Well, thank you very much. And, I could not have done this without the other members of the board. And during our time without a planner, if it hadn't been for Sally Dale and the other members of the board at that time, nothing would have happened. Sally was an incredible, incredible help and kept things moving. It was a tough time, and we can we can go into all of the reasons why I decided to drop off the board when we next meet. But I can give my swan song speech then instead of tonight.
Well, I know you'll bring
Thank you.
value to whatever you're doing next, and I hope a lot of it is just a hard rest because you've definitely earned it. Do you have a favorite venue in town?
I do not.
Anyone else have a favorite venue in town? Maybe we should see how it goes with
We
Rob.
can figure it.
Okay, we will send an email picking a venue, maybe like First House or something, but I hope everyone wears their funnest shirt and is with us on the 25th to say, we will still see you around, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, and I know you don't feel well, so if you drop off at any point, I've gotten you in the hot seat. Any other updates?
Yeah,
from-
we'll miss you, Diab. And you just, well, number one, the institutional knowledge, but also just the clear relish of the role and the enthusiasm for the work and the just intellectual honesty that you've brought to the table has just been really, really great.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do.
Well, I want to add one more thing, since we're going around right now, which was it has been an honor to work with you for this past year, but I've also been working adjacent to you in town for the past number of years. And of people I know in town, you are one of the few who will truly reconsider whatever opinion you formed based on new data and are willing to change that opinion if the data suggests otherwise. And that's a very hard thing for most people to do. They get an opinion and they see that the data comes in and they keep what conforms to their opinion and they toss what doesn't. And I've been really impressed over the years, and specifically this year, seeing how you really do listen, and you come up with something and then you revise it when something new comes up. And I'm really impressed with that. So thank you very much. And I hope that you won't be a stranger to the planning
Yes.
board. Although I don't expect to see you at our meeting, I hope you'll at least chime in when you want to, when you think we're doing something wrong or when you think we're doing something right. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. That is, of course, because I've been trained as a scientist and supposedly we have no egos, but of course that's not true.
But I mean, yes, DF has always, I've noticed from the very beginning, he will always listen to an argument. If the other side, he's not there, he will always listen and give a reasoned response, maybe agreeing or disagreeing, but you'll understand why. It's not just, no, I don't like it. We always get a reason, a good reason, a reason based on some facts and some logic.
Thank you. I do appreciate that.
We can stop embarrassing you. We'll say we'll do a
Yeah,
round.
please, I'm gonna have to turn my video off. I'm getting so red in the face here.
Yeah, and in case you do drop off, I did run into Henry Gall's dad, and he once again thanked us for our shout outs to him. So if you want to give one last shout out to our #1 fan.
I do, Henry. It was such a pleasure meeting you, and your enthusiasm and your for civics and for helping out in creating a sustainable vision. I think it's really important that our next generation of leaders start young and work with existing leaders in government to make sure that they have a seat at the table as soon as possible, as early as possible. So I really appreciate you being there, Henry. Thanks.
Maybe he'll swing by your party, 25th. All right. To the less fun stuff. If I say I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda, everyone's on board. They know what we're talking about. Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved with any additions that Taylor received at the last minute.
Great. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Okay, and by roll call, Brian,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Diab,
Aye.
Nick?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Taylor, how are we doing for getting caught up? Are we all caught up for minutes?
We should be. We'll see. I have to put them all in a list and then we'll see what it looks like tomorrow morning.
Well done, everyone. Thank you, Cheryl. I know you worked pretty hard on this, and Taylor, miraculous work. Thank you. We don't have any development reviews to get through in terms of topics. Site plan review will be very quick. The ZBA has reviewing their rules and regulations and the forms attached to site plan review on their agenda again for this Thursday. Again, I've said this before, but I think this is a longer topic, and I think it would be kind of madness for me to really dive into it right now when we've got some really good ideas swirling around. I think we should wait until after the election when we get slightly different organization in place, and we'll let the ZBA get through their rules and regs, and then we'll see if we need to consider anything on our end, if there's anything that can be improved, and then on the longer range, if we need to go back to the bylaw and make any adjustments so that we can do that in one effort. So that is all I'm going to say right now about site plan review. I think everyone recognizes the importance of kind of improving it and continuing. It's already come a long way, but we will see what happens after the election. Brian, I will hand the mic over to you for onboarding materials.
Perfect. So I was, I think 2 meetings ago, maybe, I shared some topics for onboarding material so that I could prepare a document for new members. I've attached a draft of that, should be in the packet starting on like page 2 with a memo, just so that if you saw this before you got the packet, you'd know what I was talking about. You know, the goal of this document is not necessarily to be holding all of our policies or a handbook, although it could be that. It's mostly meant for onboarding of a new member so that somebody like me who was brand new last year could have got this and said, these are the kind of things that you might encounter and where you might go to get more answers on these various topics. So pretty much this was sitting down and saying, what was my year like? What did I learn in a year? Trying to codify it, that's not the right word, but trying to write it down into one place so that it could then be shared with whoever the new member would be, and potentially we could keep on editing it and make it so that the following year, if we have 1 or 2 new members, they could also have this maybe updated further. So I included it in the packet. I received feedback from one member. I think that perhaps the best way to move forward, but I'll leave this to the chair's discretion, is if you have topics, if you things you want to tell me about it now, happy to hear it and take the input. If you'd prefer, you could give me feedback, say by next week, and then I could incorporate that into a draft that we could then share with whoever the new member is. But there's not really time from now till we have a new member to vote on anything. So it just sort of be a constant draft that goes forward, and maybe at some point we vote on it, but then we revise it and make new drafts. And I'm happy to take input tonight, however people want to do that, however the chair would like to go ahead with that. So that's sort of what I've got. I don't know what you had in mind, Carrie, as far as moving forward with this.
Yeah, I'll give a brief summary of the thoughts that I had when I was going through it. You did great work. I mean, you've done a great job of kind of taking all the topics that we cover and putting them into, you know, an organization that I think would be helpful. And I think, you know, I'm personally thinking of it both as an orientation guide that new members could read over and get something that's a little friendlier and a little less dense than poring over all of the zoning bylaws. And then also a quick reference that they could open in sort of those first 3 or 4 months of meetings where that's like just a bit overwhelming to hear us refer to things that are new processes for them. So I tend to be a bit visual about things. I mentioned a couple places where I think an organizational chart of how the, you know, town manager fits with buildings, fits with the planning department, and all the pieces, a visual aid there. And then you had referenced back to certain sections that are kind of detailed in the bylaw, like what criteria for considering site plan review. And special permitting processes, and I moved them over. I think they could even be abbreviated further down from that checklist that we always kind of grab for. We had write-in candidate Jack Lemanager share with us a checklist that former town planner Brian Sekeli had created for the Historic Commission to guide the site plan review process. And I shared that with Taylor and Ian, and they're going to put together kind of quick reference guides that we can incorporate into this handbook. So those are sort of things that I was thinking of as I read it through, which really just embellished what's already, I think, good work. So if people haven't had time to make in-depth comments, but have any thoughts that they want to throw out on how they would use the guide that might help pivot some of the sections, and otherwise, I think submitting suggestions to you is probably the mark, and then kind of going through it section by section.
Thank you, Carrie. And I will say that your comments were very helpful. And I was going back and forth between having more in the document and having less in the document. And I think there is something to be said for being able to have this and say, well, here are the criteria for site plan review right there, as opposed to what I had done is have a link that would then go. I mean, it just depends on how we want to go for it. And I can see the arguments both ways. It certainly can't hurt to be in here. So
yeah, maybe I've just become afraid of broken links. But the other direction we could take it in is just a table of links, where it's like link to site plan review, link to special permitting process, link to CBD guide, zoning, link to RBG, whatever, like.
I mean, that could be a great appendix. I mean, to have that in addition to, if we decided to go that way, and then have the main document, sometimes less is more in an introductory document.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Like one, either appendix page or table content, something.
that's easy to do.
Because we do, with the short checklist, we do often say, but how is it worded? And then we're back in the bylaw. So both, a memory device and a link were probably smartest way forward. What else? Anything else you'd want from onboarding materials?
I mean, in
I
my
like the
perfect-
maps. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I thought they were helpful because I'm often even saying to myself, where does this overlap with this, and being able to see them sort of side by side, I can, get a better sense of that. It was helpful for me.
I think it would be useful, and I apologize, I haven't seen this, to put in what the state expects the planning board's duties to be. The fact that we are a body which gets its authority from the state makes us a special body at some level in the town, and so we derive our power and our purview from that. So I think that would be a useful link. And then, of course, that invites everyone to get lost in the Mass General laws, and we'll never see them again. But that's, this is sounding like one of those text-based adventures where you're never quite sure where you're going to come out.
I think wherever we come out for now with whoever the new member is where we sort of land at that moment in time. But I would like to think of this as a living document that at some point, 6 months from now, someone says, hey, let's update this to include X, Y, or Z for the next time around. But it sort of does have I don't want to call it shelf life, a timetable, because we will have a new member come Saturday or Sunday or Monday or whenever write-in votes are counted. And if we wait 2 weeks after that, it loses its value, sort of exponentially drop. Each week that we wait, it's less useful for a new member.
Fair point.
But I like adding the MGL, and I can do that at the front. And I have the town charter a reference. I can also do the MGL where that comes from too. So I'll happy to do that.
I will take this template and trot it right over to Concom, which is another committee that you get dropped onto, and it's very confusing. What's the Winchester Wetland Bylaw and what's the Wetland Protection Act for a while. So if I can, you're starting a good movement here.
Thank you. So if I could just ask if anybody has any, beyond what we just discussed here, beyond specific edits that Carrie, you already gave me, if people have things they want to, if they look at it between now and say this weekend and they want to add something in the short term or even the long term, let me know. But I'd really like to get something out in draft form to whoever the new member is.
Great. Thank you. Anything else on onboarding materials? Okay, it's a meeting of brief mentions. So we do want to talk a little bit about 11 Grassmere. What do you Taylor, how do we want to do this? 11 Grassmere is a site where we have a completed ADU. So what do we have for?
I think the biggest thing is I want to encourage everyone to go drive over to 11 Grassmere and look at it. So I'll give you some context about 11 Grassmere. It's one of the first ADUs that was constructed, not under the new bylaw, but it is one of the first ones that, you know, is constructed in town. And the biggest thing, there are two important things to know. One is the applicant built the applicant built something that wasn't approved by the building commissioner or by the building department. They took their approved plans and they built something that was larger and of different design. So that's a completely separate issue than ADUs, right? That's a building zoning enforcement issue. But it is something that might happen more frequently with ADUs. We don't know, but that's just something to know about 11 Grassmere. The other thing is to consider the size of a 900 square foot ADU on a lot that is next to another dwelling, and think about how it compares. I don't necessarily think anyone is asking anyone on the board here to draw any conclusions to this situation. It's just a learning experience of what ADUs could be and what we might want to do moving forward, if there is anything that we want to do moving forward. Again, dimensionally, the ADU is allowed, but design-wise, and how it's situated on the lot and how it compares with the existing structure, I think it's good to just understand that and look at it and think about.
In what way was it different than proposed?
So let me see if I have the images here. So the let's see, one sec.
Yeah, where if we have any photos? Huh, where is it?
I have
drove
photos
by,
from the
but forgot to
building
take a
commissioner.
picture. Forgot to take a picture after when I drove by.
I have 2 photos from driving by. I'm trying to figure out the best way to share them, but you may be able to.
I just meant from the.
Yeah, so I'll look for the photos and then but I'll explain the door was moved to a different place. The windows were different. The porch was removed. There are these minor details, but when they all come together, they create a structure that is pretty vastly different than what was proposed and approved. Yeah.
And is the size still below 900 square feet?
It is.
Okay.
So it appear to be of lower quality than what was approved in terms of the
So
details?
I don't know of the quality of the construction, but I can certainly say you can draw your own conclusions about the quality of the design.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Oh.
Oops.
And it's the house on the left that it's the ADU for.
Yep.
The red house.
And I'll pull up the proposed plan.
And this is the waterfront behind it.
So the blue building is the ADU?
Yep.
Okay.
Wow. So they kind of went, I mean, it doesn't look that great from here, but
I mean, it's not,
look at the window in the bottom. And,
it's-
and there was supposed to be a porch.
Here,
So-
Carrie, I'm going to take over.
Yeah, that's fine.
Here's the proposed. And so here, I think you can see my mouse. Here's the
Yep.
front elevation. We have a porch with a setback door, 2 windows, and 2 windows up here with some, interesting fenestration on this cap. And this was changed without the knowledge of the building department.
Yeah, this looks a lot more, somehow a lot, it looks like it's been designed as opposed to what we saw in the actual. I don't know what that means.
Well, it's in different, it's in a better context with the buildings around it. It
Right, right, exactly.
try to avoid that sort of blank face to the street.
I mean, it looks like you look at that window and you think it's above a kitchen sink. And their cabinets, it looks like the kitchen.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's
They
unusual
they
to
they
put the
expanded
kitchen.
their pantry into this area where the door was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think is really crucial to remember here is that, again, this design issue isn't necessarily reflective of the ADU process. It's more reflective of, we have a applicant who built something that was not, that they didn't have a permit to build. And this could have been a shed. It could have been a house. It could have been an addition. It just happened to be an ADU. So something like site plan wouldn't have, the inclusion of site plan wouldn't have resolved this particular issue, because it would have happened after the site plan process was done. But it does show what the design of an ADU could look like on a site when it's not in context with the existing house.
So I believe the 11 Grassmere property came before this board a few years back. They did an A&R to take some of the land and move it to their neighbor who put in a garage there. And one of the concerns that I had, I believe I voted against it, was that it would affect the views of the lake from the road.
Mm-hmm.
And this is certainly impinging upon that. And there was a lot of talk about that portion of it. And I don't want to say that the property owner, I don't know if this is the same property owner. But at that time, we were kind of the discussion went around the fact that the views would remain, but this certainly doesn't keep those views. But that's ancient history, I guess. But
Here's the house on the left, and the ADU
Yeah.
would be right here. Diab, I don't have that context
Yeah,
geez, that you do, but I will say that the Conservation Commission did do a site visit to this
Okay.
site and did approve the
Okay.
ADU with the conclusion that it would not have
Okay.
adverse effects
Well,
on the
then it
neighborhood.
was looked at. That's good. Right. So, okay.
I
I'm
have
just gonna go see if the same person owns it. And they do. And that's an interesting point about the owner. Okay. The owner was a former chair of the planning board, at least according to the assessor's database.
That is correct.
my question is regarding the ADU that was built. If it doesn't match the plan, that's an issue for the building department, I presume, to follow up on. But if their plans had matched exactly what they built, it still would have gone forward, correct? There's nothing,
That is
no,
correct. Yeah,
nothing
there's
that would have,
nothing. Yep,
okay.
there's nothing that would have stopped it. Yep.
So it's only, I mean, we're here talking about this because they didn't follow what they said they were gonna do. But if they'd just simply at the beginning said, we're gonna make an ugly box, everyone would have had to still say yes. Am I correct? No?
There was in the original ADU bylaw, there was a line which required that the building commissioner ensure that it met the characteristics of something about the neighborhood, and the building commissioner could reach out to design review to get their opinion on that, on the design. So I don't know if that happened on this, but certainly if they come in with a proposal and they are supposed to follow that proposal because the commissioner is supposed to sign off that it meets the design criteria. And so changing it without,
And that is what happened. The building
yeah,
commissioner did sign off saying this original design is in, you know, is in character with the existing house. And then they built something different.
So
yeah,
that is
so this is,
that is all history now, though, isn't it? With the new state law, is I guess
We
what
actually
I
still
was looking
have that
forward.
line in our in our bylaw that the building commissioner can review on his own determination design.
yeah. So this, as Taylor, as you mentioned earlier, that part of it is a zoning enforcement issue as to what is the penalty for not sticking to the approved design.
Typically,
And
the penalty,
yeah.
the penalty is you can't get sign off.
Which
Yeah.
is what which is as of right now, if you want to get deeper into it, we won't issue a CO, but what, you know, what happens is because it's for a family, so they'll just move in anyway, regardless of if they have the CO or not, and then they'll sell the home to a new family, and then that new family will have a nice surprise finding out that their ADU that they just bought doesn't have a CO if they don't do their due diligence.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
Yep.
Lots
And
of,
it's what we don't want to put anyone in that position, but the only method of enforcement that we have is to hold a CO.
right. Yeah, you'd have to. I can tell you that ordinarily building a house, unless it sounds like in this case, there was a special standard about the design, and that's not the case. The zoning enforcement has almost everything to do with setbacks, the size, where you put the windows isn't a factor, you know. You wouldn't, or, you know, you have to build something that is substantially like what you proposed, changing the windows. But this, I understand, was done with a special provision that it met the design criteria, which they just ignored because they wanted a kitchen cabinet. Yeah.
All right, well, we just needed a heads up on ADUs. There have been others that went better. But that's what happened at 11 Grassmere. Anything else you want to say on that?
I just, if for those in the audience who are out there in TV land who don't know what a CO is, it's a certificate of occupancy, or your commanding officer, depending upon where you're from. But
Or care of, depending. Okay, 88 Harvard Street. Do you have a good framing for this, Taylor, or do you want me to get started?
Go for it, and I'll step in if you need me, please.
So 88 Harvard Street, we're again kind of briefly mentioning this because this will be the beginning of a longer process. 88 Harvard Street is a parcel in town that is in a state of disrepair, and it's a building that is, that the planning board and the owner have had some discussions about the best way forward for the property. I believe the property is not, it's not a newer building, but it's not, I think it was recently deemed to not be historic. Is that correct?
88, no, it is historic. It was, there's 1894 to 1897, and I think there was some research done on the family that lived there, which was an African American family in that neighborhood, which characterized the neighborhood at the time. And I think what had been discussed previously was the possibility of renovating the building in the same shape that this building is in. And then the town would allow them to build a building next to it if it also had the same character and shape, even though the lot next to it, if broken off, would be slightly smaller than what is normally allowed. But it hasn't really gone anywhere, and it's fallen into neglect. And I guess that's kind of where it is now.
If I may, this house, I believe, is the house which started and resulted in the addition to our zoning bylaws about preservation of historic and natural resources. The idea would be that there would be a conservation easement put on the existing building, and in return for that, they would be able to build another house on a non-compliant lot.
Correct.
So I'm really disappointed that, especially considering the historical importance of this house in that community, which has, albeit almost but disappeared in Winchester, that isn't moving forward. And I know that they came to the board with a number of plans. They hired architects. We discussed it and gave our implicit, tacit, whatever approval to how it was going to be built. And I believe they also went to historical commission and discussed it as well. So I'm really sorry to see that this hasn't moved forward.
And I think that's why, it's been brought back up to us. An advocate for historic homes has brought it back to our attention so that we can decide how to move forward. And it's worth using it, as an example rather than property by property. If we can spend some time thinking of who else might be in this position, if there are other distressed properties that would benefit from either funding or support or consideration of zoning flexibility or anything that we can do to support the preservation and restoration of this home in particular, because this process had been carried forward so far. And then how to be proactive about protecting properties that are on the verge of, being unsalvageable. I personally think that there might be opportunities through the CPA funds, or just with some attention and some thought to sort of how we can create partnerships or paths that are better paved than having back and forth over multiple incarnations of the planning board, so that we can save these properties. So my suggestion is not that we take an action today, but that we get this on our radar, and as soon as we have the new board seated, that we spend some time thinking about how we can do a better job of preserving and tending our historic
So-
parcels.
One of the things that has come up historically is the idea that we don't have a demolition by neglect bylaw.
Yep.
And there was another house on Johnson Road where essentially a tree fell on the house and they essentially let the house go to ruin. And there was nothing we could do about it. So I think that's one that would not, I don't believe that would be a zoning bylaw. That would be, I think, a general bylaw. But that was one thing that we talked about a ways back.
Yeah, we want to get kind of all of that past work in one place so that we can
Yep.
review we have the benefit of the chair of the Historic Commission with us, and his hand is patiently raised. Jack, do you want to add anything?
I just wanted to correct the record that I think several people said that this is an historic house. It probably is, but it's not officially acknowledged as such because the owners never approached the historical commission for either a preemptive determination of historical significance, nor did they apply for a demolition permit wherein we would have found it historically significant. There was some suggestion by other people that we could invoke section 4.3 of chapter 14, the demolition bylaw, wherein basically says that in so many words that the demolition by neglect of an historic property, and I'll read you the section that's relevant just for your information. The owner of a building that the commission has found to be historically significant shall be responsible for properly securing such building, if vacant, to the satisfaction of the building commissioner. Should the owner fail to secure the building, the loss of the building, such as through fire, may be considered an intentional demolition for the purposes of section 4.2, which imposes if you are in fact guilty of that, then it imposes a period of 2 years before you can do anything with the property. So just to clear that up. So that would not be applicable here is what I'm trying to say. We could not invoke that.
So, okay, I personally have a lot to learn in this area, so I don't want to start a learning excursion here. We just wanted this property to become a priority for the planning board, and I don't want to start reinventing wheels and probe the very bottom of Dieb's memory bank here. But if there's anything else we want to put on the table, I think we should. I hope that once the board is reorganized, that this preservation, attention, historic properties, and maybe the demolition by neglect bylaw is revisited. What was the last? My understanding was that the building commissioner was reaching owners. Do we know if that happened?
No, I haven't heard.
Taylor, do you know?
So the building commissioner and I are working with state inspectors to determine whether or not these. I'll show the house is actually, believe it or not, secured as much as it. I mean, even though this window here and this window here are wide open, the code actually just considers secured as bottom windows or reachable windows. So I know this sounds really strange. So there's three open windows. There's this one up here in the front, this one, and this one. And we're trying to learn to see if the state considers either one of these windows reachable by someone climbing the house. And the reason we haven't taken action yet is because if they are determined to be reachable, there's some liability concerns. And then we need to really start digging into what those liability concerns are and if the town is then actually responsible for what happens because it becomes a code enforcement. So we're learning. We're doing that. We did reach out to the owner, but we didn't hear anything back from them. So nothing to report from me and Tom yet, but we're working to learn more.
I was curious, when was it that they were before the board and the board talked about the possibility of permitting an additional structure on the land? How many years ago
I
was
think it
that?
might have been 2022.
Really? And
When I got here.
I know Sally was involved. It was very soon after I joined the board. It was one of the first things, or it may have been. Yeah, that's my recollection.
The owner appeared at the meeting?
I don't know if they did. I think there were meetings with the owner kind of behind the scenes to try to get something to happen.
Oh, it's surprising. You
well,
know,
if I
yeah.
may, in your meeting packet on page 14 and on and after that, you'll see actually it's one memo that the historical commission put together after a couple of meetings that we had with the owner. It's pages 12 and I'm sorry, 14 and 15. We outlined what we wanted him to do in order to reach agreement on saving the house so that he could have a non-conforming waiver. So that was the summer of 2021.
Okay.
And we put a
Yeah.
lot of time into this, and we were a little dismayed that we never heard from him again.
Yeah, they actually did come before the planning board several times. They had an architect who had drafted out a new plan. They had complete plans for the
Hmm.
interior and the exterior. The big
Yep.
question is where they were going to put the second um, stairwell to the second floor, and it was going alongside the house, and there was concern from neighbors that it would look horrible. But yeah, they came several times before the board. And so the fact, and we encouraged them very much to come back to finalize the plans and to move forward. So you know,
So did we.
So
Hmm.
this agreement never went forward, which is why we're here now, because they haven't built anything or done anything else. My question is sort of a practical one. If in 2021 or 2022, whenever it was, they came and instead of trying to do what they tried to do, applied for a demolition permit, and presumably it may or may not have been found historic, and a year would have elapsed and we'd be where we are now. Are we in a different place today than we would have been if instead of doing the work, other than wasting everybody's time back then, than where we would be today if instead of doing all that, they said, we're just going to tear it down and build something else here? Are we basically the same place we'd be anyway?
Can I make a stab at that?
Go for it.
I think essentially you're right. I don't know why he went this route. I can only guess that he went to Brian Zacchelli to ask what he could do with this lot. This is my recollection, early 2021. And Brian offered this idea of this new bylaw, which I think, Dia, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it had just gone into effect. And this waiver that you get if you have insufficient frontage in exchange for preserving an historical property on the lot, then you're able to have a second house. I think there's some limitations on the size, obviously, but nevertheless, so obviously he was interested in taking this route because he thought he could build two houses and make more money, and that's why he met with us first. Now he could have said, "To hell with it! I'll just take out a demo permit, and then the historical commission could impose a 12-month delay." And then in 2022, they could have just torn it down and built a McMansion. Why they didn't do that, I don't know, but they could have done that.
That's helpful. Thank you.
I don't know why they're still sitting on it. It's been radio silence since 2021.
yeah. I mean, my recollection, Jack, is that we put the historical natural resource waiver in order to get this property across this development across the finish line. So I
Exactly.
think that it
Yeah.
came up. I mean, we had some, this was Maureen was on the board, and I think she brought in someone from the state, and we had a lot of good conversations about how we could move forward with some sort of a preservation thing. So this was around the time I think the historical commission was doing the survey in the North End about this
That's
neighborhood.
exactly right. We had just finished it, and Claire Dempsey had actually written a very nice essay, which you can find on our website, about the African American community that was in that neighborhood at that time in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So, if you're at all interested, it's a fascinating essay. It's on our website, on our webpage. Little known fact is that if you recognize there's a building on Cross Street close to Washington on the south side of, it looks like a church. It was a church. It was their Baptist church for the African American community. And now it's a house.
Yep.
So I don't know if there are any action points. I mean, I think we should prioritize it after the election and we should put together the resources that everybody's mentioned here into one packet so that we're all sort of evenly educated on the topic. And come up with a plan. We're obviously waiting for the information from Tom and Taylor about what has to happen immediately to secure the property and to guide the owners.
Well, whatever may happen on Saturday, I'm happy to help.
Appreciate that, Jack. Either way, we're anything else? Anything else we want to say about 88 Harvard, or are we through with the topics? Perhaps our greatest send-off gift to Diab will be that this is a 1-hour meeting. I don't think Yi Ching and Sally were quite as lucky last meeting. If I remember correctly, that was a barn burner, but
Yeah.
off luck.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so I would take a motion to adjourn with thanks to WinCam for bringing us live to our millions of viewers and our recording secretary, Cheryl Dennis, and Ian and Taylor for always guiding us, and all the other folks. Motion to adjourn.
Diab
So
should make that
moved.
one.
So
Wait.
moved.
For a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, great. By roll call vote, Brian,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Nick,
Aye.
and for the last time on the planning board, Diab Jarius.
I'm really tempted to say no, but I'll say aye.
I'm an aye as well. We adjourn unanimously. Thank you, Diab. Good night, everybody. See you
Thank you.
Tuesday, the 25th.
Thank you, Diab.
Bye,
First,
everyone. Thank you.
Don't forget to vote.
don't forget to vote. Knock back.